Have you ever noticed how the smartest person in the room is often the quietest? It's not that they lack something to say. Rather, they've mastered something far more powerful: the art of silence. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people destroy their credibility by saying things they don't even realize are hurting them. I learned this lesson painfully. A careless comment once cost me respect I'd spent years building. That's when I discovered the Stoic wisdom hidden in silence, a lesson Marcus Aurelius taught nearly 2,000 years ago. Your words define you, and sometimes what you choose not to say speaks loudest of all. In today's video, you're going to uncover 7 dangerous phrases intelligent people never say, because every time you utter them, you diminish yourself and sabotage your influence. And here's the catch. You're probably using at least 2 of them every single day without even knowing it. Stick around, because once you eliminate these phrases from your vocabulary, you won't just sound smarter. You'll become wiser, stronger, and more respected. Let's begin. Number 1. I already know that. Have you ever admired the confidence of someone who can swiftly respond, someone who always seems ready with the perfect reply, the perfect insight, the perfect solution? At first glance, that self-assurance feels admirable, even enviable. It's the image of competence and intellectual strength we've all chased at some point. And let's be honest, it feels incredibly satisfying when you know exactly what's coming next, when you've seen it all before and can confidently tell others, I already know that. I once worked alongside a brilliant young leader named Jason. Jason was bright, capable, and astonishingly quick-minded. Whenever we faced a challenge, he was usually the first one to say, I've got this. I've already handled something similar. And at first we admired him. His confidence seemed magnetic, like the hallmark of true potential. But here's the dark side nobody saw coming. That phrase, I already know that, became Jason's personal trap. Because the truth hidden beneath that simple sentence was devastating. It shut down his ability to learn. Every time Jason said it, he effectively told his brain, I don't need anything more. I've reached my limit. Over time, Jason's refusal to accept new perspectives slowly eroded his credibility. Co-workers started to avoid sharing fresh ideas with him, knowing exactly what he'd say. And gradually, without even noticing, Jason became isolated in his own bubble of stale knowledge. The talented, promising leader began repeating old mistakes, unable or unwilling to admit he needed to change. Eventually, Jason lost the promotion he'd been working towards for years. When he asked why, his supervisor's feedback was brutally clear. You stopped growing. You became the guy who knows everything, but learns nothing. Can you see it now? I already know that isn't confidence, it's arrogance masked as wisdom. It seems harmless, but it quietly builds a wall between you and your future potential. That's the hidden cost of thinking you've got nothing left to learn. You freeze yourself in time, trapped forever in yesterday's knowledge. The ancient Stoics saw this clearly more than 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who governed an empire that spanned continents, kept detailed personal journals to remind himself daily of how little he truly knew. He once wrote plainly, "The fool claims he already knows all. The wise man admits he knows nothing." Marcus understood a powerful secret about wisdom. Real intelligence doesn't mean you have every answer. It means you're endlessly willing to learn more, even from the most unlikely places. Stoicism teaches us to embrace what Zen Buddhists call a beginner's mind, an attitude of openness, curiosity, and humility. No matter how advanced we become, the Stoics urge us to remain eternal students. Consider one of the greatest physicists in history, Albert Einstein. Even after revolutionizing our understanding of the universe, Einstein insisted, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." Einstein wasn't being modest. He genuinely saw himself as a lifelong learner. He regularly sat in on beginner-level classes taught by younger colleagues, not because he lacked expertise, but because he knew each person sees the world through a unique lens. Every conversation, every lesson, every observation held something new, if he remained humble enough to discover it. So how do you adopt this powerful mindset yourself? How do you prevent the subtle but deadly arrogance of "I already know that" from holding you back? The Stoics offer a simple yet transformative exercise. The next time someone tells you something you've heard before, resist the urge to interrupt. Instead, respond intentionally with just 3 simple words. Tell me more. When you do this, 2 extraordinary things happen. First, you break down the barriers in your own mind, opening yourself to perspectives and insights you might have missed before. Second, and perhaps most importantly, you cultivate humility, the quiet power that draws others closer, earning genuine respect far beyond the superficial admiration of appearing to know it all. Imagine what Jason's career and his life could have been if he'd simply replaced "I already know that" with "Tell me more." Instead of closing doors, he would have opened them wider. He would have learned not only new skills, but new perspectives, new relationships, and new levels of respect. Here's the reality for all of us. Life isn't a fixed curriculum you can ever truly master. It's an ongoing lesson, and the smartest among us are those who joyfully accept that we'll always have something left to learn, no matter how much we think we already know. So starting today, commit to retiring "I already know that" from your vocabulary. Choose humility over pride, curiosity over arrogance. Embrace the Stoic mindset of lifelong learning, because when you do, every day becomes a chance to grow deeper, wiser, and stronger. And that's what true intelligence looks like. Number 2. That's impossible. There's a strange pattern in human history. Every idea that changed the world was once dismissed with the same phrase: "That's impossible." Flying through the sky like a bird? Impossible. Lighting up a city with electricity? Impossible. Carrying thousands of songs in your pocket? Again, impossible. Until someone refused to believe it. The truth is, most of what we now consider normal only exists because someone dared to ignore that voice, the one that says, "You can't." And yet, in our everyday lives, many of us repeat that phrase quietly, even unconsciously, every time we're presented with something difficult, uncertain, or unfamiliar. We say it at work: "There's no way we can pull this off by Friday." We say it in our relationships: "I'll never be able to fix this." We even say it to ourselves: "I'm just not the kind of person who can do that." But here's the part we don't like to admit. When we say "that's impossible," we're not describing the situation. We're revealing our own fear. We're saying, "I'm scared I'll fail. I don't want to look stupid. I'd rather stay comfortable than take a risk." We hide behind the word impossible because it sounds safer than admitting the truth. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of effort without guarantee. And most dangerously, we're afraid of becoming someone different. But in doing that, we chain ourselves to the version of us that feels the smallest, the version that would rather not try than risk being wrong. And every time we utter those 2 words, we shrink our potential by another inch, until one day we've built a prison of our own design. The ancient Stoics saw this trap for what it was. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." He meant that most of our pain doesn't come from what actually happens. It comes from what we think might happen. Our minds rehearse disaster, so we retreat before the real test even begins. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength begins when you rule your perception." To the Stoics, the problem is never the obstacle. The problem is how we perceive the obstacle. When we label something as impossible, we remove ourselves from responsibility, and worse, we deny ourselves the right to grow. A few years ago, I met a single mother named Valerie. She worked 2 jobs, took care of 3 kids, and still enrolled in night classes to finish her nursing degree. When I asked her how she managed it all, she laughed and said, "I didn't think I could, but I asked myself, what can I do today? Just one step." That phrase stuck with me, because that's exactly the Stoic mindset. Don't ask, "Can I accomplish the whole thing?" Ask, "What's the next step I can take with what I have?" And Valerie did. She studied in 15-minute breaks. She asked neighbors to watch her kids for an hour. She wrote papers at 2 a.m. And 2 years later, she became a registered nurse. Not because she had special advantages, but because she refused to let "that's impossible" become her identity. This is the Stoic response to defeatism. Don't argue with the mountain. Just focus on the next handhold. Focus on what's within your power today. Try this Stoic practice. Next time your mind says "this is impossible," pause and ask, "What small step can I take right now, even if it doesn't solve everything?" Because here's the truth. Most of what feels impossible is simply unfamiliar. It's not a wall. It's a test. And those who keep moving, especially when the path is unclear, build a type of quiet courage that no obstacle can shake. So the next time those words creep into your mind, "That's impossible," hear it for what it really is, a reflex, not a fact. Then choose differently. Speak not with fear, but with intention. Say instead, "Let me try. Let me begin. Let me move." Because impossibility doesn't live in the world, it lives in the mind, and your mind is yours to master. If this message resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. We're building stronger minds here, one stoic step at a time. Number 3. That's not my fault. We often admire the man who owns the room, who speaks with conviction and never backs down. But there's another kind of strength, quieter, rarer, and infinitely more powerful. The strength to say, "I'm responsible." Real leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about owning your role in the outcome, even when the spotlight feels harsh. The strongest men I've ever met weren't the ones who always had the right answer. They were the ones who could say, "This didn't go as planned, and here's how I contributed." It takes humility to say that. It takes courage. But it also opens a door to learning, rebuilding, and moving forward on your own terms. Now here's the other side of the coin. The phrase that slams that door shut, "That's not my fault." At first, it feels like a defense mechanism, a way to protect ourselves when we feel attacked. Maybe your team missed a deadline. Maybe your partner called you out on something. Maybe life just fell apart. And the first thing out of your mouth is, "That wasn't on me." But here's what you're really saying in that moment. "I'm powerless." You're handing over your ability to change the situation. You're saying, "Since it's not my fault, it's not my job to fix it." And with that, you surrender your influence. I've seen this play out in real life. A friend of mine, David, went through a rough divorce. Every time we talked, he had a long list of why it was her fault. She was too cold. She didn't communicate. She didn't appreciate him. But the more he blamed her, the more stuck he became. He couldn't see the part he played. How he shut down when stressed, how he avoided difficult conversations, how he prioritized work over connection. And because he wouldn't own any of it, he carried the same habits into his next relationship, and the one after that, until finally he asked himself a different question. What part of this mess is mine? That's when things started to shift. The Stoics taught that our power begins where blame ends. You don't have to take all the responsibility to take some, and once you do, even just a sliver, you regain control over how you respond, how you grow, and how you move forward. Epictetus didn't say, "Own the whole mess." He said, "Focus on what you can control." And you can control how you show up after a setback. You can control how you treat others. You can control whether you make excuses or seek solutions. Responsibility in the Stoic sense isn't about guilt. It's about freedom. The freedom to act with intention. The freedom to evolve. The freedom to stop waiting on someone else to fix your life. I once worked under a manager who took this idea to heart. Anytime something went wrong in our team, even if it wasn't directly his doing, he'd start by asking, "What could I have done differently?" It wasn't weakness, it was leadership. And guess what happened? We trusted him. We followed him. And we started taking ownership ourselves, because he showed us how. If you want to build that kind of strength, start with this simple practice. The next time something breaks down at work, at home, inside you, ask yourself, is there even 1% of this that I could have handled better? That 1% is your lever. It's the crack in the door that lets growth in. It's the beginning of a better version of you. Write it down. Don't explain it away. Just own it. Fully and quietly. That's the Stoic way. Blame is reactive. It makes you feel momentarily protected, but in truth, it makes you smaller. Responsibility is active. It's a decision. It's the moment you step into your power and say, maybe I didn't cause this, but I won't let it define me. So the next time your ego whispers, "That's not my fault," pause, breathe, and remember, the path to mastery always begins with the words, "Here's what I can do better." Number 4, I don't need any help. Some of the most exhausted men you'll ever meet are the ones who never ask for help. They wore strength like a mask. They smiled when they were falling apart, and every time someone offered support, they answered with a quiet lie. I'm fine. I've got it. But let's be honest, we've all done this. We've all convinced ourselves that independence is the only form of strength worth respecting. And we've all paid the price for it, mentally, physically, emotionally. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most dangerous illusions a man can believe, that needing help is a weakness. Let's start with a man history remembers as unstoppable until he wasn't. In 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte, brilliant general, political mastermind, stood at the edge of reclaiming power after exile. He was poised to take back Europe, and then came Waterloo. He was no stranger to war. He'd outwitted some of the sharpest minds in history. But at Waterloo, something shifted. He ignored key advice. He underestimated the importance of coordinating with his marshals. He brushed off warnings that Prussian forces might reinforce the British. And most critically, he chose to act alone when collaboration could have saved him. Marshal Soult urged him to take defensive positions and wait for more clarity. Napoleon refused. His confidence drowned out every concern. And what happened? His forces were overrun. The Prussians arrived, the British held their ground, and the emperor who once ruled half of Europe fell for good. Not because he wasn't brilliant, but because his pride was louder than his logic. Napoleon's downfall is a timeless lesson. Believing you don't need help isn't leadership, it's blindness. The Stoics never saw asking for help as weakness. Epictetus said it plainly, we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids. We weren't designed to carry everything alone. We're interconnected by nature. But somehow, especially in modern masculinity, we've twisted that truth. We celebrate the lone wolf. We reward burnout. We label silence as discipline. And all the while, we suffer quietly, refusing the very thing that could save us, connection. So, why do we resist help? Because asking for it feels like surrender. We think, if I need support, then I must be weak. But here's the real danger. When you refuse to reach out, you're not just choosing to carry your burdens alone. You're also choosing to be cut off from others. From insight, from relief, from perspective. You block the input that could help you grow. You isolate yourself from those who care. And ironically, you rob others of the gift of helping you. That's right. Sometimes giving someone the opportunity to support you is an act of generosity in itself. Now here's the truth. Real strength isn't silent. It's strategic. It's knowing when to grit your teeth and when to say, I need a hand. Think about it. If Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at the time, could publicly express his gratitude to teachers, family, and advisors in meditations, then what excuse do we have? He didn't pretend he built everything alone. He understood what intelligent men always learn. No man becomes great by himself. So here's your Stoic challenge. This week, stop pretending you're bulletproof. Pick one situation where you're overwhelmed, confused, or stuck, and instead of silently enduring it, ask for help. It could be as simple as, can you take a look at this? Do you have 5 minutes? I don't know what to do. What would you suggest? You're not surrendering control, you're expanding your resources. Because the truth is, the men who thrive in this world, who stay sharp, stay sane, stay alive, are not the ones who do it all alone. They're the ones wise enough to build alliances before the war begins. And if you ever feel that pull to say, I've got this, I don't need anyone, pause. Ask yourself, is that strength speaking, or is that fear in disguise? Because as Stoics we know, self-mastery doesn't mean isolation. It means knowing who to lean on and when. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is whisper, I can't do this alone, and that's okay. Number 5, I'm too old for that. You've probably heard it before, maybe even whispered it to yourself. I'd love to try that, but I'm just too old now. It sounds reasonable, even mature, like you're simply accepting reality with grace. But if you look deeper, what you're really saying is, my story's already written, my pages are closed, nothing new can begin. And that, my friend, is not wisdom. That's quiet surrender, disguised as self-awareness. Let's flip the script for a second. Imagine a man past 60, broke, rejected more times than he can count, sleeping in his car, and holding nothing but a recipe for fried chicken and a stubborn belief that it was still worth something. Sounds like someone who should just give up, right? That man was Colonel Harlan Sanders. And the world told him, over and over again, that he was done. But at age 65, when most people were counting the days to retirement, Sanders started again. He drove across America, knocking on doors, offering his chicken recipe to restaurant owners. He was turned down over 1,000 times before someone finally said yes. That yes became the beginning of KFC, a brand known across the world. Sanders didn't just build a business. He proved a point. Age doesn't determine your potential. It reveals your resilience. But let's talk about why so many men stop themselves before they even begin. Not because they lack the ability, but because they've bought into a quiet, cultural myth that life is front-loaded, that growth has an expiration date. They say that's for younger guys. It's too late to change now. People my age don't start things. The Stoics would call that nonsense. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. He wasn't obsessed with death. He was obsessed with living while he still had time. Because the tragedy isn't that life is short, it's that we waste so much of it believing our moment has passed. Now here's the darker truth most won't admit. When a man says, I'm too old for that, what he's really afraid of is looking foolish, of stepping into the unknown and not being the best at it, of starting over in a world where younger, faster, flashier voices seem to dominate. But Stoicism doesn't care about speed or spotlight. It cares about meaning, integrity, purpose. And those don't fade with age, they deepen. So let me ask you, what have you told yourself you're too old to do? Go back to school? Start that side hustle. Get in shape. Learn a new language. Apologize and rebuild a broken relationship. What if the real issue isn't your age, but your fear of being a beginner again? Because the truth is, every step forward at any age is a rejection of despair. It's a statement that says, I'm still here. I still matter. I still have something to give. Colonel Sanders didn't wear a cape. He wasn't a tech genius or a billionaire. He was just a man who refused to let age define his ending. You don't need to launch a global brand, but you do need to stop saying your time is over when you still have breath in your lungs and fire in your gut. So maybe, just maybe, it's time to dust off that old dream, the one you buried under a pile of somedays and maybe laters. You don't have to go big. You don't even have to tell anyone. Just take one quiet step toward it. Not because the world demands it, but because a part of you still wants it. And that's reason enough. If this message sparked something inside you, hit that subscribe button. We're not just chasing wisdom here. We're reclaiming time. Number 6, I'll do it later. It always starts innocently. I'll do it after work. I'll start next week. I'll call them when things settle down. Those words don't feel dangerous at first. They feel reasonable, responsible, adult. But here's the thing no one tells you. Later is the most seductive lie you'll ever believe. Because it sounds like a promise, but it's really a slow surrender. Not to laziness, but to fear. Steve Jobs, near the end of his life, said something that shook me. Remembering that you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he didn't cling to someday. He cut the unnecessary. He focused. He chose to live like every day might actually be the last one he got to create, to speak, to love. And that's what Stoicism has been saying for over 2,000 years. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." But let's bring this closer to home. Maybe you've told yourself one of these lately. I'll get back in shape after this busy season. I'll apologize when it feels easier. I'll start that project once things calm down. I'll spend time with my kids after I've built something they can be proud of. And week after week, that life you actually want slips further into the fog of eventually. Here's the brutal truth. Eventually isn't a date. It's a graveyard. It's where good intentions go to die. I knew a man once. Brilliant, driven, respected. Let's call him Michael. Michael had a tough relationship with his younger brother. A falling out over money, pride, and a misunderstanding that neither of them wanted to touch. Years passed. Michael always said he'd make that call someday. He'd say, "It's not the right time. We both need space. I'll do it later." Then one day, a call came, but it wasn't from his brother. It was about him. A car accident. No more time. No more later. Michael never got the chance to say what mattered. and the silence left behind was louder than any apology he could have given. This isn't about guilt, it's about urgency. And urgency doesn't mean panic. It means you know what matters and you move toward it. Now, the Stoics called this memento mori. Remember, you will die, not to depress you, but to remind you that life isn't something you schedule. It's something you show up for. When Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that death could come this very moment, he didn't spiral into fear. He focused on how to live now. So what are you waiting to do? Start the thing you keep dreaming about. Fix the relationship you thought was too far gone. Finally, take your health seriously. Not next month, but today. You don't need to do everything, just one thing. One act of courage that says, I won't let later steal this from me. Because the man who waits for the perfect moment is often just afraid of imperfection. And the man who acts, even clumsily, learns to walk while others are still waiting for permission. Let's be real. You and I both know that life doesn't slow down. It doesn't wait until we're ready. It just keeps moving. And if we're not careful, we don't realize what we've missed until it's no longer ours to recover. Maybe today is the day you stop waiting. Not because everything is in place, but because some things are too important to delay another day. Call them, start it, say it, try. Even if it's messy, because later is fragile, but now is yours to claim. Number 7, that's just who I am. It sounds honest, doesn't it? That's just who I am. It feels like a declaration of authenticity, like someone owning their truth, refusing to wear a mask or pretend to be something they're not. On the surface, it can even feel admirable, confident, bold, a person drawing the line and saying, I know myself. But if we look closer, not through the eyes of comfort, but through the eyes of reason, we'll see a dangerous illusion hiding behind that phrase. Because more often than not, that's just who I am isn't an honest admission of identity. It's a shield, a quiet, subtle way of avoiding growth. When a man lashes out in anger and says, that's just how I've always been, what he really means is, I'm not willing to do the work to change it. When someone avoids responsibility, fails to communicate, shuts down emotionally, and says, that's just who I am, they're not telling you who they are. They're telling you what they've stopped trying to improve. And that's the real danger. Because the moment you declare your flaws as your fixed nature, you've built yourself a prison and handed the key to your past. The Stoics didn't believe in that kind of resignation. They believed in self-mastery. They believed that every man is capable of transformation. Not by accident, but by deliberate practice. Epictetus didn't say, be true to who you are. He said, control what you can. And what you can control, above all else, is how you respond, even to your own tendencies. Temperament is not destiny. Habits are not life sentences. The way you've always reacted is not the only way you ever will. But if you cling to that's just who I am, you give up the power to evolve. You let your past dictate your future. You close yourself off from the very thing that makes you human, your ability to change. Let's be honest. Change is hard. That's why we avoid it. That's why we create these clever little phrases to excuse ourselves from the work. Because looking in the mirror and saying, this version of me is hurting people, or this behavior is no longer serving me, takes courage most people don't want to summon. But Stoicism isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about walking straight into it. Because on the other side is freedom. There's no growth without resistance. No strength without struggle. No character without conscious effort. So the question isn't, is this who I am? The real question is this who I'm willing to stay? Every moment you're alive, you are being shaped, either by your habits or by your choices. Either you're repeating the same patterns or you're rewriting them. There's no standing still. You are always becoming something. The only question is whether you're becoming better or just more deeply entrenched in what no longer fits. The Stoics taught that character is forged, not inherited. And if you believe you're stuck, it's not because you are. It's because you've chosen a narrative that makes stagnation feel safer than growth. But there is no safety in stagnation, only decay. And maybe that's the truth no one tells you. Maybe the version of you that feels most natural is simply the one you've practiced the longest. Maybe just who you are is only just who you've allowed yourself to be. And if that's true, then the door out is right in front of you, and the handle is labeled choice. So what now? Don't wait for life to force you to change. Don't wait for relationships to fall apart, or careers to collapse, or your body to give out before you decide to stop saying, "This is just me." Start asking instead, what kind of man do I want to become? Then practice being him, every day, especially on the hard ones. Because in the end, who you are isn't defined by your instincts, it's revealed by your discipline. And that, my friend, is not a limitation. That's your freedom. So, which one of these 7 phrases hit you hardest? Maybe it was something you've been saying for years, not realizing how much it's been holding you back. The truth is, intelligence isn't proven by how sharp your words are, but by the wisdom to know when to stay silent, when to unlearn, and when to grow. You don't have to change everything overnight. But what if, starting today, you chose to retire just one of these phrases? Not because someone told you to, but because the man you want to become deserves better. Let me know in the comments. Which one are you leaving behind? And what topic would you like me to explore next on this journey of Stoic living? If this message resonated with you, subscribe to Stoic Spirit. We're building something deeper here, not just motivation, but transformation. And if you know someone who's wrestling with these same battles, share this video. One good thought at the right time can change a life.